Welcome to the Hernia Gods Podcast. This is your mere mortal host, Luke Elms. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this podcast belong solely to the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy, position, or opinions of Orlando Health or any of our employers. And now, without further ado, let's talk hernias. All right, welcome to another episode of the Hernia Gods Podcast. This is your mere mortal host, Luke Elms, and today I am joined by Paul Colavita out of the Carolinas. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I was just, this is a full circle moment for the podcast because I've told the story a bunch of times about the fact that I was at the American Hernia Society sitting down, just kind of hanging out. I think I was having a beer or something at the bar down in the hotel there and was struck up a conversation. And during the conversation, realized that we're all the same and that we had the opportunity to kind of talk about it. And that conversation was with you. And so it's a full circle moment for me to actually have you on the podcast. And also I think it's about time because we have not gotten any of our Heidel hernia members, their fair share of respect for the hernia game that they bring. So again, I'm just so thankful you came on. Like we start all of our episodes, I'd love to just hear a little bit about, who you are, where you come from, and how you got where you are.
Absolutely. No, I remember our conversation well. It was, you're right. We shared a lot of the same interests, whether it was lifting, music, and hernias. And Here we are. So I'm Paul Colavita. I've lived in North Carolina most of my life. Grew up in Charlotte. I went to Duke undergraduate, then UNC for medical school, and did my residency here in Charlotte at Carolinas. I was trained by Bedger Augustine, who was on last week, Todd Henneford, Ken Kircher were kind of my hernia mentors, and Brett Matthews. I became the chairman halfway through my time here. And so I kind of had a ventral hernia pedigree, I feel, and I was well trained. And then went to Oregon, did a fellowship with Lee Swanstrom, Steve DeMeester, Christy Dunst, and Kevin Revis. Kind of became a foregut guy. Was hired back at Carolinas, and I got back here in 2016 and lived in a hernia and foregut world for a little while. In the last, probably 5 years, I shifted to mostly foregut, and I don't really do very many ab wall surgeries anymore.
Yeah, is that something that is the foregut shift and I'm assuming you still do quite a few Heidels in the foregut world?
Absolutely. I do probably 100 paraesophageal hernias a year. I have a surgical endoscopy practice as well. I do POEM, G-POEM, Zankers, but my number one customer is a paraesophageal hernia for sure.
And was that something that that when you went to Oregon, they trained you up in kind of the foregut side, and so when you came back, that was an expectation that you were going to be doing that, or is that just something that you kind of filled a void or a need for those patients?
So I went to Oregon really to focus on that, and I saw myself probably having a career where I did both. I was the frequent presenter of the American Hernia Society, European Hernia Society. When I was in Todd Henneford's lab, incredible mentorship, and we traveled the globe. We went to Asia, Europe, all the United States, presenting our research. And I thought that I was going to live in both worlds, and there was a little bit of a void to fill. Todd was the primary foregut person here when I came back, and he was obviously very busy with ventral hernias as well. So there was space for me to fit in and build a foregut practice. And then as times changed, we kind of had ventral hernias covered, so to speak, and my need wasn't really there. And I was doing, a handful of really complex ab wall surgeries a year, and there were it kind of got to the point where it was kind of silly to do 12 big cases and just stick with the devil at that point I knew well, which was foregut surgery.
Yeah, I think that's always it's an interesting point for the people out in the community as well, because we know that there are certain surgeries that is really well documented that high volume centers do them well and have lower complications than if you just kind of dabble. And you're at a place that has a lot of volume of that type of work. And so, in a setting, your definition of doing 12, it probably would seem like quite a few for some of the people that are out in the community that may not be seeing it as frequently. Do you feel like, from your standpoint, what do you think is like the magic number for doing like those types of the big complex abdominal walls that would have made you feel comfortable continuing that?
I don't know. I think that 12 a year. I think that I wasn't getting the efficiency my partners had. You watch Vedra Augustine do a preperitoneal hernia repair, Todd Hannaford, Kent Kircher. It's like magic. They can just separate that peritoneum from the posterior rectus sheath, make a huge pocket, and put a piece of mesh. And if I was doing the same case, the next room, they're probably closing the fascia, and I'm, maybe finishing my flaps. I mean, just doing 12 a year, I didn't have the speed they had, and that starts to get frustrating. You do a big case, takes hours, and my partners who are better than I am at it are faster. It didn't make sense for me to do it. If I had to guess, I think you got to do a super complex revisional ab wall surgery. You have to do a couple of months minimum to be at the top of your game, I think.
Yeah, it's so interesting just because we have I come from the Panhandle of Oklahoma, and so out there you have surgeons that are doing a lot of stuff that other places are specialized out, and they may not do high volume, but there are significant times in places like where I grew up where they're just not going to travel. Like the idea of someone traveling to one of the major centers, for a lot of those folks, it just doesn't happen. And so it becomes an interesting like dynamic and an interesting question between access for some of these patients and competence and efficiency of the surgeon. It's a really interesting, delicate balance between the two. Do you feel like, you practice in a large center, and so you have the ability to maintain volume in your other things. And so when you jumped into the paraesophageals, it sounds like that's kind of what you really wanted to do anyway?
Yes, I would say that became my primary interest after fellowship. I think I began to enjoy foregut more than ab wall. But when I was a resident, I spent probably a total of 12 months with Hannaford over the 5 years. And I spent a year in his lab outside of that in the middle. And so I felt well trained. By the end of my residency, I felt like I could tackle a whole lot of abdominal wall cases. And I enjoyed them. And I guess I still do, but when all you see is the really tough ones, just because of the practice we have, it just didn't make sense for me to keep doing them. But foregut was definitely became my love, and it's rewarding. It's like a ventral hernia; they're often different. You have to be technically sound. You have to follow tension principles, and it's part science, part art, and obviously the patients get that gratification from symptom resolution almost immediately after both of them.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about you went into foregut and kind of gave up the ab wall stuff. I went the opposite direction. I don't do foregut and I don't do like paraesophageals anymore, and it's for the very same reason, is that I was doing such a low volume of them, and other people were doing more, that I have always kind of been of the opinion for myself. I can only speak for myself, but I always feel kind of doesn't feel right if I'm doing a surgery that I don't do very often, and like the guy right next door does it like every day, and I always try to like practice by the same principles of who would I send my family to kind of aspect, and so it is an interesting thing because in our system, with the way things are set up, you're giving up volume, and that volume can sometimes really be something that you're being scrutinized for, especially as you're kind of growing a practice. But at the end of the day, it just never felt right to me, and so that's one of the reasons I actually gave that game up, is just because I wasn't doing very many of them, and I thought this is not something that after 10 years out of residency, I'm just all of a sudden going to start getting a deluge of those types of referrals. So I probably should just consider not saying that I don't do those anymore.
Yeah, no, it's mirror images, just foregut and hernia. It's exact same, just opposite here. No, you're absolutely right. It's the they're both high stakes environments, right? We have you have potential for major abdominal wall complications, infections, hernia recurrence, mesh infections, and there's processes and protocols you're going to follow to minimize those. And it's a high volume person who's going to have those and know how to avoid the pitfalls.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because you do go through that kind of learning curve early in your practice where you are kind of having to practice on people. I mean, we go through all the training, you go through the simulators, you go through all the different educational tools, but eventually, you have to have your first patient, and that for me, it's one of those stressful things taking it prime time. That's why, I've asked the people that I've had the opportunity to talk to that have invented big things, like, what's your thought process when you go into a case and you're like, well, this is the first time I'm taking this to an actual, human being that we're going to see how this works. It's really interesting because most of their answers are based around the fact that they're really just building on, like you just said, core surgical principles, and usually are building on knowledge from previous types of procedures. When you get to when you walk into the operating room for a day of surgery and you see the board, like what's your ideal mix for you to be like, this can be a good day?
Well, I'd say my favorite case. I do love an esophageal poem. So I do Zankers, I do G poems for the gastroparesis, but an esophageal poem, they're just fun. It's an elegant endoscopic procedure. But I think my favorite laparoscopic would be a small sliding hiatal hernia. You just have you have enough of a hernia to have planes, and you can do a nice mediastinal dissection, close the hiatus, do a fundoplication, or any anti-reflux surgery you're choosing. And like the recurrence rates aren't terrible for the small sliders. Those are my favorite. For the technical satisfaction of doing the case and speed and efficiency and patient outcomes. So dream day probably a mix of sliding hiatal hernias and esophageal poems. The problem is we don't get a lot of sliding hiatal hernias and surgical referrals. It's all monster, gigantic paraesophageals, and that's okay. They're fun too.
Yeah, oh yeah. Isn't that always the way? You're like, man, I love that. That's the way I do. The majority of my practice now seems to be inguinal hernias, and I enjoy doing them. I'm definitely not complaining about the people that I get the opportunity to work with and help. But you get there and you go, I used to have small hernias in my practice. Like, did they just start referring those to someone else? Like, where did the straightforward stuff go? Like, I used to actually have those, and I didn't. The same people are referring to me. I don't know where they all went, but you never want to bite the hand that feeds you, because you're just happy to have it. But definitely, as you do something more and more and kind of become known for it, all of a sudden, all the game that made you fall in love with it usually kind of disappears, and you're left with the little higher stakes environment.
Oh yeah, no, it's the foregut. It's you start getting all the redos and the revisional paraesophageals. I try to give the residents like a lesson every case. Like today's lesson is this, and the redos. The lesson is usually don't go into foregut surgery, just because it's a slugfest every redo.
Yeah. Those as a resident watching those redos, and they'd be like taking down a wrap or something, and I'm sitting there going like, they're gonna use a harmonic there, and then the patient does well, and I'm just like, okay, wow, that's crazy. I would have never, I definitely didn't see that plane. And then you get older, and you're like, oh yeah, they didn't either. They were having to they were just using experience to make the plane. But
same thing with the reoperative abdominal wall, right? They've got mesh in a couple different planes. You got to find them or create them. It's all hernia surgery. It's what makes it fun.
Yeah, well, it's some of it is also what you're comfortable dealing with the complication of, because at some point in these cases, you have to make the move that is, you're playing statistics, or you have to make that move that you're like, well, this could go well, or this could go poorly. I've done everything in my power to raise the level of success to a level that's acceptable, but at some point you have to make the move, and you make that move, and you go, most of the time you're like, all right, good, and then occasionally you're like, well, okay, now I've got to fix that. And that was kind of always the stress. I don't know why, like the distal esophagus, like that injury or something, that always that always freaked me out. So that was power to you when you're doing all those.
Yeah, it's funny. I think training with people I trained with were all perfectionists, right? I mean, we uh, everything you can do to minimize the complication. And when I first started, like I remember my first redo, we're taking the wrap apart, and it's my first year back in Charlotte, probably my first 3 months. And I probably scoped that patient 8 times during the fundoplication takedown, just like,
Yeah.
like insufflate this side. Okay, that is the fundus, and then over here, and then leave the scope in as a bougie to feel the esophagus, and then
Right.
with time and experience, you start to see it, and but they're just so afraid of complications. And you're right. It's once you start to figure it out and you can see through the mess, there's times there's a I'm not really 100% sure is this the exact right plane, and you know sometimes you have to go for it because you don't have any other options.
Right.
But man, I would scope so much, and now with age and experience, uh, I'd scope a lot less. I still do it, but a lot less during the case.
Yeah, like for me, the equivalent was like the big scrotals having like the resident reach under the drape and pull the testicle down to make sure I'm looking at like what I think I'm looking at. You're sitting there going like, "Is that the cord?" And you're like, pull on the testicle. You're like, "Okay, I can see it moving there." Yeah, it's interesting because early, like you're talking about those early cases, it can really shake your confidence pretty hard. At least me, if you have a complication early in your learning curve of something, especially in that technical aspect. I think as you get more and more volume, the complications still hurt the same. It's not like that goes away, but at least at the end of the day, so I fall back on, well, at least I've done, at least this is my first one, and now I just don't know whether I can do it or not. I've done X number successfully, and this is obviously not one that didn't go as well as I wanted, but at least I have that track record. When you're doing, the esophagus is pretty high stakes in a lot of cases, and we've all sat through a residency M&M and heard the esophageal leaks and things like that. How does that? Are you the type of person that's able to kind of compartmentalize your life, or are those types of cases that stuff that you lose sleep over?
That's a great question. Um, I would say I have trouble compartmentalizing it, especially early on. Like I inherited some complex leak bariatric cases when I first came because I gave a grand rounds on endoscopic leak management when I first got back, and that was a terrible idea. I was on 24/7 leak call for a year. I mean, if there's a leak, I got the call.
Yeah.
But it was a patient who had a sleeve leak, and she had a stricture of her sleeve, so we ended up trying to convert her to like a subtotal gastrectomy. Complicated story, but she leaked at her GJ. She had a retroperitoneal fistula we didn't know about that we found and repaired, but she was sick. And I would just sit at home and like every commercial break, I watch TV with my wife. I pick up my phone and check her vitals and put it down. Check again the next commercial break. Just obsessive over this my first really complex case, and I think now I worry about them, but I don't check every 15 minutes on their vitals. Rely a little bit more on the residents to call me if there's issues, and but it's tough. It's you put a lot into these patients. It's a long operation. It's a long recovery when they come in with a complication and you're trying to fix it. It's stressful for the patient, stressful for the surgeon. But it's as I think as I've gotten older, I'm getting better at that kind of work-life balance and trying to leave work at home when I can.
Yeah, I've made a lot of progress. I think I was at 15 minutes. I think I'm at like 17 now. Maybe I've bumped at least an extra 2 minutes on that vital sign. I had a patient who had a big abdominal wall recon. Tough case. Was one of those cases that's like unexpectedly tough, that early in my career would have been just an absolute disaster because I didn't have the tools that I have to deal with something where you get in there and go, uh-oh, this is like way worse than the CT scan suggested initially. And so you go back and I was able to convert and do the more complex deal. And she's doing fine right now. But even last week, I'm sitting there, I'm the type of dude that, she goes home from the hospital after a few days and, they get a call from me every day. And so like on Sunday, she's just like, okay, you again? I'm doing fine. I'm like, okay, well, just checking, But it's one of those like you call the nurse. It's like, I saw the heart rate was 105. It's like, yes, she was walking. I'm like, okay, well, you should make a note next time. My heart rate's 150. But yeah, no, it's so tough. I am a perfectionist to a fault, and it drives me crazy because that perfectionism sometimes it makes me just like not trust anybody else because I don't know if you ever have those issues, but I never. It's I also know that nurses are busy and they got multiple patients and stuff, and nobody's going to watch as close as I would.
Yeah, no, I think I got to look at my resident reviews of me when I went for a promotion to associate professor 4 years ago, and the biggest complaint was micromanager. Just no autonomy, like with floor care, and but when you're a perfectionist, you want to squeeze the margins. Every chance you have to optimize their outcome, you want to exploit, and that's it's a challenge when you're trying to teach and let the residents have some say in the care. But I agree, perfectionist to a fault, guilty of the same. It's minutia is what makes a difference.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know. There's a fine line between that have to be perfect versus doing a good job. But then there's also like this line between good enough and good. And for me, like the people are like, it'll probably be good enough. I'm like, whoa. Like if you ever, like if I ever hear someone say that, I'm like, okay, what did we just do? But it's funny because there's a toll that is taken on you. Especially earlier in my career, it was even more, it still is today, but there's a major toll that's taken on me trying to teach when you're a perfectionist. Because they throw a stitch, they do something, you're like, that's not exactly okay. You kind of got to let them make mistakes because they need to learn. But then on the flip side of it, I am so terribly tough on myself when I do have a complication that you hate the idea that, well, if I would have just done X, Y, or Z, or if I'd have just gone back and reinforced that area or something. I never want to have one of those moments where I look back and go, I could have done that better, and that's the part that's so hard for me.
100%. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a tough balance, and I mean, I think that's the micromanager complaints I get. It's like, yep, no, we're going to cut that stitch out. That fundo is a little asymmetric. We're going to redo the toupee there. It's worth the time if they're going to have a better outcome, but it's a challenge.
And it's also funny because a lot of the stuff that we do, we let the resident do, routinely, like the closures and stuff. That's what the patients care about. And so occasionally you're sitting there like, they're like, are they micromanaging my port closure? I'm like, well, yeah, because it doesn't look very good. And that's the only thing they're going to care about in the office, and there's also a difference whenever you're a pure elective surgeon and there's an expectation of outcomes from not just the patient, but the referring physician. And that's like how you feed your family, and so there's a level of pressure. And I was just talking to some of the residents today about the fact that, I'm a firm believer that this comes across very pessimistic, and probably is because I'm a pretty pessimistic person. But I'm like, nothing ever really gets better through residency and into practice. It just gets different. And so like, you get out and you're like, oh, I don't have to be in around at 5 a.m. I can just determine my schedule a little bit more. And then you get out and realize that like all the pressures that you didn't realize existed when you become an attending, that as a resident, those were just different pressures. They weren't the same. And it's not like the pressure disappears. It just morphs into something different.
Absolutely right. It's new, administrative headaches, right? Like epic messages, patient calls, committee meetings. It's different noise. but it's still noise. I will say this though: I would not go back and do residency again. I like this
No way.
noise better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you definitely have a lot more control over the noise, and this noise. Believe me, I having control over your schedule somewhat is way better than anything in residency. But I think that I at least underestimated the different pressures that arose. And it's like you said, it's a double-edged sword. You're sitting there and like meeting after meeting, and then you're going, well, if I put that meeting there, I can't do this case, and this patient's really want their case done that day, and it's just like you're always kind of in this balancing act of. It feels like sometimes I go to work and I'm just like, okay, I got to choose who I'm going to disappoint today. So, somebody's getting disappointed. I just got to figure out which one it is. So, but I don't know. It's an interesting. It's a really interesting thing because I had some of the same complaints on my evaluations, and I still do. Now I'm just brutally honest with the residents about like my perfectionism. I'm like, we're taking that stitch out and redoing that because otherwise I'm not going to sleep for the next 3 nights, and I really need my sleep. So
yeah, if I explain my I don't know what the eccentricities to them, they accept it more.
Yeah,
that's how I feel. Like I drape this way, and it's part superstition, and or whatever by minutia I like to do is I just some it's just me. This is what I need to do to sleep at night, like you're saying. I mean, it's kind of funny how we get a path, we want to do it, and we don't accept variation from the path.
Yeah. The whenever you have like for me, I think there are people. Everybody takes complications seriously. That's not the insinuation, but some people take them very seriously from a professional side, and they do the right thing and everything. And then there are other people I've seen that it's not just a professional hit; it's really kind of like a really personal hit to them. And where do you fall kind of in that gradient?
Oh no, it hurts personally. And I'm lucky to have a benign foregut practice. I'm not doing esophagectomies. And our complication rates are low. If I talked about this last week, I was on call and we're covering colorectal and surgical oncology, and they're doing surgeries that have known leak rates that are significant. I was like, I couldn't do this. Like I couldn't, do this LAR and they have a leak. This would emotionally hurt me. But I also think that when you're in that field, you get used to it. You know the percentages, and it gets back to you're saying earlier, like you have a denominator. The ones have your success rates, and you're on par with national benchmarks, and maybe that gives them comfort, and they accept this is going to happen. And when you have a field where a leak and an injury to the esophagus should be a 1% or less, that would just be a devastating injury for me emotionally to deal with. So definitely personal side. That hurts.
Yeah, it's and it for me, I take it home, and I think here more recently there's a kind of a compounding of the fact that I'm kind of going through it, and then I also see it like affecting my kids. They're obviously not like upset about the complication, but they are kind of like upset that dad is kind of distant. They'll come up and be talking to me, and it'll be 10 seconds before I'm like even in the same room with them mentally. And so it's a very interesting thing. Something I've really been thinking about a lot lately as we talk about the primary trauma of a situation like that, where it's the patient and their people that are affected by that directly. And then there's the secondary trauma of the caregivers and the providers and things like that are dealing with it. But really, I think that there's like that whole, it's hard to be married to a doctor, I'm sure. I'm married to one, but, I know that she's blessed because I'm just like a fantastic husband. I'm sure she would suggest that. She doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can say pretty much anything and people would think it's true. but I think that there's that tertiary kind of trauma. And whenever I'm going through something like that, it's really hard. It's funny because I was, that was actually kind of what I was thinking about when we started our conversation up in Nashville. because I was just thinking about, I was sitting there in those meetings and listening to the lectures, and you're listening to all these people talk about, this is how I do this and this is how I do this. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting there having like flashbacks of, oh man, I bet if, 5 years ago, maybe if I would have done that technique, this patient wouldn't have had that problem. Or if I would have known that, and then, my partner, he always has a much better perspective. He's like, that, let's be clear, like that didn't exist 5 years ago. I'm like, well, but it's just, it's tough for me sometimes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, when you take it home and you're thinking about the patient, you're checking your phone every 15 minutes. I think I don't know how to stop doing it. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think it's either again, if you have a surgery that has a 10% complication rate, I think you're getting them to it, right? You have a denominator, you know what your statistics are, but the one-off disaster, that's tough. And I mean, the first patient I talked about, my wife would refer to her as VIP. I pull up my phone. She's like, checking on VIP. Yeah, checking on VIP. And then a couple years later, I had a younger patient and another complex situation that was VIP 2, and we now have 3 VIPs that pop in and out of the hospital sometimes. And I'm like, oh, VIP 2's back, and she's like, okay, I understand. It's like I've got to go take this call, that kind of thing. My wife, let's be, she understands, but the kids don't, and I try to turn it off dinner time, bedtime, and then if I got work stuff to do, I'll take care of work stuff then.
Yeah, my kids are getting a little bit older. Of course, really early in their life, they don't have any idea, And it's funny because my wife's an OB-GYN, and so she understands. She's, being procedural, I think, helps because, it wasn't until she got back to do it. She was doing like hysterectomies after a period of time where she was out doing mostly just obstetrics as part of like a laborist program. And when she got back doing hysterectomies, she was just like, I can't sleep. I'm worried about this patient. I'm counting down the days until their follow-up appointment and all this stuff. She's like, this is brutal. And I'm like, that's exactly what I've been feeling. I'm like, all those times you're upset, that's me, so there is, but it's really interesting how, even people within the medical field may not fully grasp it. It can be like really, really isolating when you're going, man, I'm really going through it, and nobody else around me really gets like, they're like, I'm sure the one that kills me is I'm sure they'll be fine. It's like, okay. Oh, now I feel great.
Yeah, I'll just need a tincture of time. It'll all get better.
You're like, let's go really slow right now. I don't know. But what do you do? What do you do for decompression? Obviously, you work a lot, I'm sure, and everything like that. But what's your kind of let it all loose and let it all go routine?
Yeah, so I started hitting the gym a little under a year and a half ago. When I was younger, worked out a lot, and halfway through residency, I just stopped and took 13, 14 years off, and got back at it. And that has been the biggest quality of life improvement for me in the last year and a half. Just going to the gym before clinic day. We start at 8. I can get there at 5:30 and get a workout in, shower, and head to work. My attitude, the way I feel, is just so much better if I work out in the morning. So I can usually make that happen maybe 1 or 2 work days, and then on the weekend and get 3 in a week. And that's how I decompress. And it's really helped a lot. I mean, just in all aspects, I'm healthier, leaner, stronger, and the dopamine, the endorphins, whatever. It's good for mental health.
Oh yeah. I have these I do these workouts on the weekends. I, for some reason, can't. I've been trying really hard. I have an alarm that's set at 5 a.m. to get up and work out before work, and every single day I change it to 6:30. So I don't know. I should probably just change it to 6:30 at this point. But I would have these workouts on the weekends, and my trainer, I have a trainer that just texts me. He's like, "Hey, how's the week look?" I'm like, "Horrible." He's like, "Okay, I'll check in with you on Saturday." So anyway, he's always like, you need to get in and out, man. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'll do these like 2.5 hour workouts each day on the weekend. And I call them like my mental health workouts. It's like half lifting and half listening to like music from my teens, just like, it depends on the mood. Like sometimes I'm just like chill. I'm like, oh, this is nice. And other times it's like straight up like Limp Bizkit and Corn, just like blaring, and I'm just getting all the anger out. But you're right. You get done and you're like, okay, I can handle this now. It's like there's a level of release that comes with that.
Yeah, no, they go to full clinic day, 15, 16 patients, however many are consults, and that's just easier to get through if you start off in the gym that morning. At least, for me.
Yeah, we were just dying before they got us an APP here recently. And my clinic days were like, I finally had to be like, I can't see, like, please don't schedule more than 45. And it was crazy. And so finally we've got some support now. So now I'm like, okay, if I have like a 15 patient clinic day, I'm like, oh, this is nice. I actually get to connect with them on a deeper level than just like trying to put out the fires, because it is it's interesting when you're, we were trying to cover a really busy emergency department and all the follow up from that and our own practice. And, everybody identifies a need, but it's unfortunate with the way that it goes. It's like once you identify the need, it still takes months to get to get it fully in place and get the help. And during that time, you're just like grinding it out and like burning down. And so I was doing really well at lifting for a long time there, and I was feeling fantastic. Like my back stopped hurting, like my neck didn't hurt anymore. I'd even got to where I could do a day of like laparoscopic surgery and my hands wouldn't be numb by the end. It's like just like the ergonomics of everything was improving. And then it just, you have like a period of time where for me this time it was December, where everybody's just trying to get all their surgeries in. And so I was just cranking through them in December, and it comes up, you come home, you're just dead tired, and I can't do it. But for some reason I can't get up early. Maybe you've inspired me. Maybe I'll leave the alarm on for 5 a.m. and just snooze for an hour and a half tomorrow. It'll be a step in the right direction.
There you go. Did you say 45 patients in the clinic?
Yeah, it was brutal. And we didn't have, that was with no residents, no PAs, no scribe, nothing. And so the problem was I would see, up to, sometimes I'd have over 120 patients, and then like you don't document. So I'd like frantically like scribbling notes on a paper. And then on the weekend, I'd come home with like 100 charts. So I'd end up working like the whole weekend. And so it'd be this like never ending cycle. And I don't want it to seem like my employers were like forcing this. They were not. My employers were like, are you insane? And I was just like, no, we're trying to get to this like next goal, because the problem is you have to justify help. And the way everybody looks at the justification is volume. And so if you're going like, hey, I'm kind of at max capacity, I could really use somebody else. They're like, well, what are they going to do? Like you're doing it. And so then it's like it's a weird thing where you have to be at like 150% capacity for people to be like, well, now it makes sense to do that. And I call it like the opposite of the field of dreams. It's like, there's no like, if you build it, they will come. It's just like, wait until the cornfield's like burning down and then they'll call the fire department. It's like, that's kind of how that always seems to work. And it's not, I don't think it's like place specific. It's just the name of the game of medicine as it is currently.
Yeah. I mean, I hit the 20s, but 45, I couldn't do that. I took a foregut consult. I spent 30 minutes with him probably. And fellowship Swanstrom would triple book every clinic. He would do a half day a week, but every spot was triple booked. Mm-hmm. And we'd finish at 10 o'clock at night. Like the last patient leaving the building at 10 o'clock. It was wild. The guy he had a lot of other responsibilities. He was editor for Surgical Innovations. He's like editing journal articles in the middle of clinic. And I come see him to present the patient. We go see them, and he would see a patient while I was in one room. It was insane. But 45 solo. I can't believe you were doing that. Yeah,
that went on for about 6 months, and it really, that was real during that period of time. That's actually when my like working out stopped, because it was just kind of like I'd get home and for me, by the time I get home at night, sometimes I'm so just mentally exhausted, and that's even now. It's not like now we're much better. We've got a lot more support, and everybody identified it, and I have zero complaints about how that was handled. It was that's just getting people and the right people in the positions and getting people to accept the job and stuff just takes time. But I get home, and the problem is I have all these wellness things, right? So if I could just, I always have these like grand ideas. I'm going to read, I'm going to read books, and I come home and pick up a book, and I'm asleep before I get past the first page, or I'm going to, I need to lose some weight because I constantly am battling that. And come home and I have like such decision fatigue that I walk in, like open the fridge, and before I even sit down with my meal, I've already eaten like 2,000 calories, and I'm like, oh, well, that's gone. It's an interesting thing, and at the end of the day, but we're the product, and how we take care of ourselves really impacts how we take care of our patients, and so it's a really delicate balance, because I feel an obligation. And again, people weren't forcing me to do that. We were trying to get our surgicalist program off the ground to really take care of our patients effectively, to get the inpatients taken care of. And that required us following up. So those 44, a lot of them were post-ops. A lot of them we would follow our hernia patients, pretty serially for that first year. And then again, serially for the first 5 years. And so a lot of those are like check-in type visits where you're kind of just going in, hey, are you having any chronic pain? Are you back to your normal activities? Do you have any, any other things, and doing an exam? And so some of those visits are pretty slow, and really realistically, or pretty fast. And realistically, those are things that are best served for, an APP to begin with. But once we got that set up, then it really allowed me to focus back in. And so I really have so much more enjoyment in clinic now, being able to actually sit down and take the time and get to know the person. And the funny part is that we, during that middle of that period of time, we were working so hard and seeing so many patients, as they were building our support around us, we got AI dictation. And so then it was like listening. And so it was really incredible when that happened. Like, it was like getting to take back the human interaction of medicine again. Sitting there, not taking notes, just like having a conversation, and getting done with the clinic, and having at least the framework of your note done made a huge difference. So that was another big step for us. But I'm sure that you're probably seeing so much of that. I mean, like a redo, the redo stuff that you're doing. I mean, just the counseling on the risks and benefits alone is a significant chunk of time, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, honestly, the biggest chunk is reviewing the records, right? It's getting their old op notes, and some of that's before you see them. But it's you get this pile of stuff, and it's all scanned into their chart. You got to go through it, and you either do it the night before, which you got probably want to do other things, or maybe you're doing stuff from that day, right? That whatever you did on Monday, you got to do Monday night, and then Tuesday clinic, pile of stuff you didn't review yet. So you're going through their old pH tests, their old manometry, imaging studies, op notes. That takes time, and then you're right. It's just like a redo patient probably needs like an extended visit. We just run it long, but my nurses are just they know that we're gonna kind of work. I'm gonna work through lunch, and then we'll catch up by the end of the day, kind of thing. But the post-op visits, like hernia, it's pretty straightforward, right? It's any reflux, you're off your PPI, dysphagia, stuff like that. But I think without a doubt, I'd having the patient interaction, getting to know them. I spend a lot of time up front in the consult, and that actually makes the post-op stuff seem to go a lot smoother, because they know me. We've talked about all the stuff that recovery was going to be like, and they're either on that path, or we've had some speed bumps, or they're cruising, and it just seems like makes, if you spend a lot of time up front, it makes the post-op care a little smoother.
Absolutely, especially if things aren't going well. Like if you're trying to develop a relationship with the patient during a complication, oh my gosh, like you're so far behind the eight ball. Like if you get to the end and they're, the let me put this in air quotes, like the best complication, which is none of them are great, but the best ones when the patient gets done and you sit there and you're like, well, this is what's happening. They're like, yeah, you said this could happen. And you're like, oh, good, you were listening. The ones where they're like, you didn't tell me this. You're like, I promise you I did. But I think that's a big deal. Jumping back to your lifting, were you an athlete in high school and earlier in your life?
My big sport was wrestling. I was a high school wrestler, pretty good. Won states my senior year of high school.
Dang. That's not pretty good. That's really good.
Thank you. And then I played football. I wasn't very good at football, but played 2 years of high school. And then I stayed in the gym after that, college, med school, early residency. And then I let it all go for 15 years.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. I was a track and cross country and basketball player. And now everybody just assumes I either played football or was like a sumo wrestler. But but we get to when I got into college, I played college ball for a year, kind of tore up my knee, and used that as my excuse to get out of it, because college basketball for me was like all the parts of high school basketball I didn't like all the stuff that I was like, I love basketball, like that all went away. It was, everybody was, a lot of people are just looking to like get their stats to make sure that they're kind of moving on to the next level, because I wasn't playing like D1 or anything. I was NAIA D1, so that a lot of those folks were trying to jump into the NCAA D2 or D1 level, and so it was a very interesting experience. And so then I kind of just like burned out on it. And I'm one of these guys that, unfortunately, I'm like an all or nothing person, like to a fault, like always to a fault. I'm the guy that's like, I'm going to start working out. And I go to the gym and I'm like, I'm going to work out 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the first day I miss, I'm like, well, I guess I'm not working out anymore. It's like, and so I got into residency, and of course I wasn't working out at all. And one time I went home, this is kind of funny. My wife, I love her to death. She's sweet, but she's also super blunt at times. And I came home and I was like, man, some of the nurses on the floor were calling me fat. And I was actually feeling kind of bad about myself. They're calling me fat. And she looks at me and she goes, well, do you think it's like your medications, or do you just have no self-control? And I was just like, oh, okay. I'm just going to go over here and eat this whole sleeve of Oreos now. I was like, thanks, honey. Appreciate the support.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, like I got fat, and it happens slowly. You don't notice it, and you're like, oh, that's a bad picture of me. You see some picture, and I don't know. Then I didn't even know that one day it clicked. I wanted to start working out again, and I just started doing it, and then you slim down. I was like, holy crap, I was fat.
Oh yeah.
Same. Yeah, you don't notice it as it happens.
It's insidious. It just like sneaks up on you. Then pretty soon you lose the weight, and you're like, hey, my knees don't hurt anymore. That's weird.
Right. Yeah. And like you said your back didn't hurt. Same. I mean, like I used to always I'm stretching, popping my back, and my core core stronger. Better posture. It's a game changer. I wish I'd gotten back at it sooner.
Yeah, me too. It's so funny because there'll be periods of time, like my wife, she's worked out like nonstop. She's worked out her whole life, and she played college soccer and stuff. And so she doesn't know what it is to be like out of shape. And so she recently had some orthopedic surgeries, and so she hadn't been able to work out for like 6 weeks, and she's dying. And I was just like, honey, believe me, you're going to be just fine. Like, you're going to bounce back in a couple of weeks. But my problem always was when I had the best of intentions and wasn't just doing something ridiculous, like trying to work out 3 hours a day every day. But even when I had the best of intentions, I'd go back and like forget that I'm 40 now and I'm not 18 anymore. And so like put some weight on, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. Like, I'm like dad strong. And then boom, shoulder goes out. I'm like, oh God. And so it's funny to be in the gym and be working out with like these little, like much lighter weights than I ever would have wanted to be seen working out with before. And I'm just like, you guys wait until you pull something. Then you're just like, it's like not a walk it off kind of moment. It's, I pull my shoulder and I'm down for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, my first day back, I remember I put 95 pounds on the bench press, like 25 on each side, and the 45-pound bar. And, we got 10 reps and I was like, oh, I think I actually have a pump. I mean, like, how weak was I? What happened? Then after a couple months, I mean, it's like there's muscle memory, and I started like reading about it, like, this seems like it's coming back really fast, and there's literature and scientific hypertrophy stuff, but it came back quick, and I mean, I don't know, I got to keep grinding. I'm definitely addicted now. Like it's there's no going back.
For sure. It gets to a point where then you start to, like, I'll have a really busy time and I'll start to slide a little bit. And I'm like, God, it's like painful. You're just like watching, you're like, oh man, I was getting so close. I just have to keep in mind that, all this stuff comes in phases, but I also lose track of where I came from, because it got pretty rough there. I got really into, craft beers, and I was just like, this is amazing. There was this like really cool craft beer bar down the street, and I was like, I gotta try all of these, and then you stop and start, and so then eventually it's also like, I am a little bit overweight, maybe I should start to see. So the first thing they're like reading, like, you should track your calories. Like, track one day's calories. And I was like, 6,000 calories. I was like, how am I not dead? And people are like, what is, I'm like, I'm eating 6,000 calories a day. And they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, no, I really am. And they're like, well, what are you eating at night? And then somebody will come over. And I had this one friend who came over one time, and he was just like, he goes, did you eat? He's like, you can't be eating that much. I was like, no, really, I think I have been. And the other day he was hanging out, and he's just like, and we ate something, and I ate like a few pieces of pizza, and he's like, dang, you're still eating? I was like, hey man, this is a lot better. I was like, I used to order, when my wife would go off, and this was before we had kids, and I would order 2 large pizzas and slam them by myself in an evening. It was all, no holds barred. And then all of a sudden that stopped being a functional thing, because, I was not burning all those calories back in the day. So
I mean, you could put it away when you're 20 and you burn it off, and then we get older and we can't anymore. Like I remember doing like, wing eating contests, and I was like in college, the competitive eating was so big, and we would have campus wide hot dog eating contests, and I'm trying to crush 20 hot dogs in 10 minutes. And I'm getting 2 hot dogs now, and I think I'm stuffed. It's just, it's crazy what you can do when you're younger.
Yeah. And I work with a lot of bariatrics guys, and they look at me just a little bit weird now. And I'm just like, hey, like, ease up, buddy. I'm not like, not yet. So like, you're sitting there going like, I'm not sending your kids on that vacation this time. So I think they're just like waiting around. They're like, well, these days this guy's going to fail his diet, and we're going to get him. But we had you also do music, right?
Yeah. So I played guitar in a past life. I have hardly played in 20 years, but I still enjoy music. I listen to a lot of music, gym, car, at home. I've recently got a record player, so I just throw a record on and sit in my office and do some stuff. So I'd say I'm a music lover, but I'm not a musician anymore.
Yeah. What's your go-to in the OR?
So I got to kind of cater to the crowd in the room. So safe music is like 90s on 9 on Sirius XM, maybe 90s alternative, Lithium Channel 34. But if with the right crew, like the Circulator, CRNA, Scrub, who I know like heavier music, we'll listen to some Octane, maybe some 90s hip hop, but a whole lot of 90s alternative.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do would be go in the room with my partner, and he would have his phone set up, playing music. And I would log on to his phone, and while he was scrubbed in, and put on, and it was playing over his phone, I'd put on Aqua's Barbie Girl, and then I would just like lock his phone and leave. That's a good one. That, it's I think you would get so angry. It might have become a patient safety issue after a while. So maybe I probably shouldn't do that again, but that was a good one to pull on people there for a while. But yeah, no, I think I have to watch when I listen to music in the operating room. I almost have to listen to music I don't like, because otherwise I'll get like to thinking about it or singing along with it, and it'll like distract me. So I have to find something. I've got to where I let the scrub, our scrub tech has a few playlists that she knows that the whole room kind of likes. So we just kind of roll with that. But yeah, well, as we come again, I'm just super excited that we were able to get on and talk, because it's funny because this is again that sitting in Nashville having a drink, whatever. I think what you said to me, the phrase you said to me, to give a little behind the scenes here, the conversation was about how I was sitting there listening to all the people lecture, and I was saying that I did not feel that that I would ever be on their level, and you basically said, I know most of these people, and they're just normal human beings. They get up and present and everything, but they're just people at the end of the day. And I think that was the moment that I was just like, I think I know that, but I don't think I intuitively knew that, but I don't think I'd really considered the fact that some of these massive names are just normal human beings. And so that was when I was just like, I think we're all more alike than we think, and we can get it, and hopefully we can just have a chance to talk about it. So again, thanks for the inspiration. It's kind of taken off in a really cool way. So I appreciate the conversation that we had. We never know when our actions might impact somebody else, but yours definitely set this in motion.
Well, thanks, man. I'm glad to be part of it. I've tuned into a bunch of your episodes. I think it's great. And I enjoyed that I got to play a small part in the snowball that became this awesome podcast. So kudos to you for taking it at the end, running with it, and building this. It's awesome.
Yeah, I sure appreciate it. And you'll have to compare with Vedra and see which one of you think you guys did the best, had the best podcast. A little partner competition there.
Yeah, no, her wall's directly, like, the other side of this wall is her office. So
that's funny. Well, I've looked at that wall before. Then I'm assuming maybe
it's the other side. Yeah.
So at the end of like we do at the end of every episode, I do give people their chance for their hernia hot take. This might be our first hiatal hernia hot take, and so no pressure, but you are setting the bar for the paraesophageal hiatal community currently.
Yeah, well, I think on the topic of hot take, it needs to be a little controversial, and you're going to find all sides to this argument. But my hot take is reinforcement of the diaphragmatic closure for paraesophageal hernia with a prosthetic mesh, absorbable synthetic, or a collagen-based biologic mesh is the correct thing to do to minimize your short-term recurrence. And perhaps even if you're just delaying a hernia recurrence, it's worth it, and mesh should be considered at the hiatus.
There it is. Yeah, I know. I know a few people that would argue both sides of that point just in my hospital system. So yes, I think that will serve as the benchmark for the paraesophageal. And so the next foregut guy we have on, they'll have to up the bar.
Yeah, we'll see what DuQuoin thinks.
Yeah, I've known Chris a long time. I can promise you one thing about Chris, and he probably won't listen to this, but it will be very well spoken. It will be eloquently delivered, the hot take.
Oh, he's a good guy. We're on a SAGES committee together. So I just interacted with him at the meetings, but great surgeon. It seems like he's a budding leader at USF.
Yeah, he's been a very good friend of mine. He was 1 year ahead of me in residency, and we've stayed in touch since then. And he was even the resident that gave me my tour at when I came down here for my interview at Orlando Health. And I'll never forget, because I walked out of it and I said, man, that's crazy. I was like, this guy's saying that he's going surfing like 2 or 3 times a week over on the coast during residency. And I got into residency, and about halfway through my intern year, I'm like, man, I have not had any time at all to go to the beach at all. Like, how is this working? And I talked to him, and he's just like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't a thing. I was like, oh, I came here for that.
the old bait and switch.
Exactly. But no, I love Chris, and we're trying to work out a date. So like I said, we'll have to have him try to up the bar on your hot take. But again, man, I really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate the conversation, and look forward to seeing you at the meetings. Likewise, thanks for having me. It's been fun, and I hope to see you in person soon. Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, this wraps up another episode of the Hernia Gods Podcast. It's your mere mortal host, Luke Elms, signing off. Thanks.